You're listening to the Movement is Medicine show, a podcast hosted by Head to Toe Spine and Sports Therapy, a modern chiropractic and manual therapy practice in Edmonds, Washington. Now, let's get into the show. Welcome, everybody, to the Movement is Medicine show. As you know, we are fresh into 2021, so of course, we need to have a goal-setting episode on the show. And today we have the entire team. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
What's up, team?
We have assembled all of the Rockstar Doctors here at Head to Toe so we can get into a combination of our personal goal setting and how we do patient goal setting. Because one of the big challenges or questions people have when they come into the clinic is, how many times do I need to come, or how long is it going to take for me to get healed? So we're going to talk a little bit about that from a patient side of things. And then we're also going to jive on and riff on a little bit about what we do from a personal standpoint when it comes to our own health, wellness, our own 2021 goals. So let us dive in. Let me kick it over. Dr. Annie, would love to hear from you on goal setting. You can take us in either direction. You can take us on the patient side of things, or you can get into your own personal goal setting if that's top of mind.
Oh man, this is awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, 2021 is like, first off, it's kind of about recovery and then resetting my own health goals for the year. So personally, I'm still riffing off that important theory of consistency in movement and consistency in stress management. For me, that's brief meditation, and then consistency in exercise and diet. So looking at the fundamentals, for me, reviewing my hydration, my daily eating really clean, whole foods, making sure I'm caring for my body in the way that it should be cared for, looking after my mindset, looking after that. For me, life is so busy, and I think it's the same for everyone else, certainly for our patients. Such a crazy amount of things we've got to manage these days. So taking that 2 to 5 minutes for mindfulness every day is so key. And then movement, our exercise looks so different than it did when our gyms were open. And so really getting reset on what that looks like for our bodies. So for me, I'm being fairly gentle and forgiving with myself because I've gotten out of shape, and that's okay. A lot of us have, but bringing that back into the forefront with my daily movement, being really consistent with that is my personal goals for 2021 thus far.
Well, I think what you're bringing up is so great. Foundationals. Sometimes we find ourselves in a place in life where we're really, it's really about growth, or we're about specializing, or we're really honing something. And other times we're very much in a reset style mode. And let's go back to basics, and that's, I think 2020 was so disruptive from a routine standpoint, from a lifestyle standpoint, from a mental and emotional health standpoint, as well as a physical health standpoint, that I think many of us find ourselves, as we're coming into 2021, breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief and hopeful of finding our way back into some healthy, positive patterns, both from a physical standpoint, from a mental, emotional standpoint, and a health eating standpoint as well. So I really love your approach and your angle, and I love how grounded it is.
Yeah, it's supposed to be simple too, right? I mean, we know these fundamentals, and we get too fancy with stuff, especially when the new year, we're going to do all these things and set all these high expectations for ourselves. But, we really have been shaken up, or at least certainly I personally have been shaken up by 2020, and just need that recovery and a little kindness towards myself in my expectations. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
I love it.
From a patient standpoint, just based on what you guys have been saying, how 2020 has been so disruptive, and how, everybody's patterns of life and lifestyle has been so affected by what's going on in 2020. I don't think a lot of people realize how much it's really affected them, from a mental standpoint and also from a physical standpoint. And from a few of the patients that I've seen recently, like beginning of this year, a lot of them are coming back from not being treated for so long. And in addition to that, a lot of people are coming in because, you know, they're lost with where their bodies are at and they don't know how to get started again. They just don't know where they're at. And it's a hard place to be in, and it's a hard mental block to get through. And I think it's very important to realize that your perspective on getting better physically or getting better mentally is 100% part of the game. And, you know, the question becomes, how do you start to rebuild? And a lot of people can't take, you know, loads and loads of information at one time. And so to make it easier, what I've been telling patients is to create habit stacking for themselves. You know, what do you already do in your life that you do every single day? And what can you add on that's small to make your routine a little bit more meaningful for you and a little bit more beneficial for yourself? And even if that can't be reached, give yourself some grace. You know, everybody's going through pretty much the same thing. You know, you're not alone in any of this. And obviously we're here to guide and we're here to teach. But definitely give yourself some grace, and just be very gentle with yourself, because most of us are already damaged and in the dumps with everything that's gone on politically, health-wise, all of that stuff. So yes, the new year is time for new goals, new beginnings, but doesn't mean we have to start all over again. You know, we're reframing what we've already done and bringing it back to life a little bit. So just a little tidbit from what I've seen personally and with my patients. Hopefully that helps with people who are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
No, I was going to continue on with that a little bit and just, you know, I definitely see that a lot with some of the patients coming in as well, is that, you know, it's just been a hectic past year. There's been so much going on. Your mind's in just a bunch of different places. So I feel like, you know, kind of continuing on with what Dr. Ashley said there is just really reminding, I've just really been encouraging patients, I guess, to kind of like, I love that habit stacking idea, but really just to focus on like what's in your control. Right? Like, obviously there is so much going on outside in the world right now that is not in our control. And it's really easy to get caught up in all that stuff, especially these days. So when it comes to like self-care in their bodies, sometimes that can kind of fall by the wayside. And then, you know, we're seeing those patients come in now and like things that have kind of fallen by the wayside in terms of like pains that they might have, they're starting to be more and more now, and then, you know, their mind's going a bunch of different places. So what I've been telling patients is really just to focus on like, even if it's just one thing a day, especially when it comes to their bodies and when it's coming to treatment, and be like, okay, like, you know, let's focus on like, it's my shoulder that's bothering my low back. Okay. It's like, I'm going to actually spend a little bit of time on that today, do some self-release on it, do some stretching or anything like that to help that feel better. And really, like I said before, just focus on what is under your control for that day. Because if you get too caught up in all the things that are not in your control, then you're just going to start to feel more stressed out, and your body eventually is also going to feel worse because of it, because stress can just really wreak some havoc on your body. So that is, you know, kind of continuing on with what Dr. Ashley said, really just, you know, try to focus on what's in front of you, take things one day at a time. And, you know, for myself, you know, I set little goals for myself each day about what I want to do. Like, is it going to be nutrition wise? Is it going to be exercise wise? And you know what? Build off the good habits that you have. Like Dr. Ashley said, add some little ones on here and there, but really take it small at the beginning and just focus on those one or two things for the day that you want to do really well, whether or not that comes down to nutrition, self-care, or anything like that. And just really emphasize that and take care of what you can control.
I think when it comes to Tim and Ash, great, both phenomenal points. Because I think when we look at what we want to address in our life, the tendency is to overdo it, right? So we tend to go after too many things at once. And then what happens is, because that's overwhelming and we see all the different things we want to work on, or maybe areas we're dissatisfied or areas we feel stuck or frustrated with, you know, we might be looking at trying to address exercise or movement thing. We might be addressing a food weight loss type health thing. And we're trying to make changes in both of those different categories. And at the same time, we might be dealing with a stressful or challenging home situation or a family situation. We might have a work or financial considerations or job stuff hanging over us, or goals that we want to achieve there, and professional development goals. So all of the stuff typically can get jammed in together. And I really appreciate you both bringing up how critical it is to relax a little bit, give yourself grace, recognize that, where we are today is in some cases, coming out of a PTSD style year where we're all dealing with some form of, stress related, trauma, concern and worry, and sometimes really significant, huge impacts maybe to our life from COVID, from the different political stuff, from everything that's happened. And to have a little grace and narrow that focus down and be okay with maybe just picking one or two small things to focus in on versus trying to go after everything all at once, right? It's like you don't need to overswing. It's okay. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay just to focus in very narrowly on maybe just one area that you want to work on, and don't feel like you have to make progress on all your goals all the time.
100%. And I mean, just to kind of piggyback off a lot of that stuff, and especially with what Tim was saying, with like kind of writing down your goals. I mean, that comes down to personal accountability, right? So what we have to do is we have to form some sort of structure in our lives where we set goals for ourselves, but then we have the structure to work towards them. And oftentimes for most people, it's really just getting started. Like if you just have like that minimum goal of like, oh, eventually, like I want to be able to work out for like an hour a day, or I want to look a certain way, and this workout's going to help that. The issue is not necessarily that like, that you can't do that. The issue is that you're not even getting started. So like for me, especially like if I just get started on something, whether that's writing paperwork in the office, or that's like eating a salad for lunch in the morning, or something early, doing something that's for my goal of the day, just get it started. That's what it really comes down to. Because once that ball's rolling, it's just going to pick up momentum. You're going to do more and more, and you're eventually going to attain your goal. Just go for those main big general goals, make little small ones out of it. That's exactly what we do in the office. We find out, what does that person want to do? Do they want to run around the block? Do they want to walk upstairs? Do they want to hold their kid? That's the ultimate goal. But ultimately, we break it down in the office to make it into little steps that are easily attainable. And that builds momentum over time. And eventually we attain what we want. So that's how I usually go about it. I wrote down my goals on the first of the year. I try to do that most times, most years in general. And I really don't even look at it, to be honest. I already know what I wrote down. From here on out, it's more about me journaling throughout my day, and I can look back on that in like a month or two from now and see if I'm working towards things. And I already know that I am, because I'm holding myself accountable and doing the little things each day.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, no, just, that's how we form habits, right? As Dr. Lee said, you just hold yourself accountable to a few things that you can achieve every day and be consistent with it. And all of a sudden it's part of your routine. It's not something you question anymore. So
I think part of that too, the writing down piece, is a piece that can everyone. I put journaling, because we're talking about journaling, right? Journaling, yes. I put in that category of things we should do for ourselves, but often don't, along with things like flossing and foam rolling and lacrosse balling, soft tissue home care release, right? Like pre-dynamic warm-up, pre-exercise, some stretching post-workout. It's like we have a long list of things we should do, we know are good for us, and we don't do. And when it comes to our goals and when it comes to making progress, man, journaling can be so simple and yet so powerful. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. So I really appreciate, and I think too, Lee, what I love you bring up is just writing it down. Even if you just wrote your goals down and you didn't touch it again, there's tremendous benefit to doing that, to formulating your goals and crystallizing them and looking at it from a health standpoint, from a finance standpoint, from a emotional, spiritual standpoint, from a relationship standpoint. Like, what do you want to be experiencing this year? And what gets you really excited? Even if you just write it down and never touch it again for the whole rest of the year, you're way better off than if those things just kick around in your head. And then if you can move into a spot where you can build into a daily discipline of writing a couple things down, or writing, down what you're going to do that day or what you did that day, can be such a powerful practice.
100%. I mean, if you write it down, you're legitimately and literally taking the thought in your head and putting it down on paper, making it something physical and tangible. Anybody else could read that piece of paper and know what you're thinking at that point. So that's no longer your thought. It just grows and grows from there. It gets bigger, and like that's kind of we get into some existential talk if we really want to, but I don't think we need to today.
That would be a good future topic, though. We should get into the philosophical and practical aspects of journaling, because there is a lot of really cool stuff we can get in there with manifesting and creating and, taking thought to word, word to physical and writing stuff down. If you hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand, and journaling can be a really powerful way to get there. So, but yeah, that's a rabbit hole. We could spend a lot of time on that.
Oh yeah. I could talk about that all day.
Totally agreed. On one more note on goal setting, besides journaling, is to add that calendar block. I know it sounds less fun, but if you block it on your calendar, your digital calendar that you use every day, it really helps cement that goal.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You bring up a really good point, which is often neglected. Is what is your existing system? Like, how do you get things done today that are just like your practical things you need to get done, work related or life related? I mean, if you're a person who uses, like you bring up the calendar method, which is a really great method. That's like where you take a calendar and you block tasks out on the calendar, like their appointments, and you execute them on the calendar. Time blocking, super powerful. Other people might use a to-do app, of which there are endless to-do apps. And so maybe you have a to-do app, or maybe you don't use digital and you're a index card person, and you always carry that index card around, or you're a notebook person or you're a day planner whatever your system is. If you don't have any system, I would encourage you to experiment with any or all of these and find the one that you vibe on the most. But you need some kind of system most likely everybody has something that they do usually. And that's such a great point, Annie, that you bring up, of connecting whatever you're doing into that system, because sometimes otherwise it's just like this personal development goal or this thing you have, but it doesn't then get into that system you use to get stuff done on a daily basis. And then into Lee's earlier point, it's like you have a good idea or good intention and you never take action on it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, the journaling, setting the daily intention for how you want your day to look, rather than your day sort of taking hold of you and controlling you. If you do those pieces with mindfulness, and then also do that, for me anyway, do that time block, checklist, whatever it may be, so that you're really ticking away at it. It's quite powerful.
Yeah, no, I definitely. Oh no, I was just going to say I definitely agree with that. Yeah, for myself, I just, a while back, I never used to do that kind of stuff. And then, thankfully, my wife, who's just super organized, checklists, all that kind of stuff, just really blew my mind. I was like, wow, what's going on here? And then, so she kind of got me into doing that kind of stuff. Even just like Dr. Annie was saying at the beginning of the day, it's like, just even outlining what you want to do that day, whether or not it's a checklist or on the calendar. I tend to do like some pseudo kind of checklist type stuff for myself. I kind of like to write it out because I like kind of seeing it on a piece of paper or in a journal. It really does give a lot of structure to your day. And I found that as soon as I started doing that, even, on days where I'm not working, if it's like a day off and I got stuff that I want to get done, it's like, what do I want to get done? I list it out and I'm kind of like, okay, like this is what I want to get done. And not only does it help you give structure to your day, but you feel accomplished when you go through that list and you're like, sweet, I get to check that off. Like I did that. Like, sweet, I did the next one. I get to check that off, or whatever it happens to be, checklist or journal. And I do think that, not only with structure, but also just those little wins you can give yourself in the day is huge, because then that just builds confidence in what you did. It builds habit, and then you can continue on with that.
I do like the idea of breaking it down in piecemeal, Annie, you bring up a really good point with the whole calendar and blocking things off. And I think that's a good way to view it, from a wide-eyed standpoint. You look at your week, or you look at your month, and you see all these big goals that you're trying to accomplish or how you're trying to be productive. But if we break down piecemeal and take it day by day, for example, making a list, like Dr. Tim mentioned, those tiny wins are so much more meaningful to you and your bigger goal. And I found, just personally, if I'm making a list of things that I want to do to be productive, not only do I put down those things, like